It says on the cover of your order of service that the topic for today's sermon is corrected vision, and I changed it to keeping the faith in hard times. I felt the need of reflection on that topic. The first reading is from Theodore Parker, theologian, Unitarian minister, transcendentalist, abolitionist, born in Lexington, Massachusetts, and ministry in West Roxbury, among other places. And in all those places, he caused trouble. In 1853, Parker predicted the inevitable success of the abolitionist cause. He wrote, "Look at the facts of the world. You will see a continual and progressive triumph of the right. I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches it in little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by the experience of sight. I can divine it only by conscience. But from what I see, I am sure it bends towards justice." The second reading, a little more than 100 years later, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King quoted Parker when he wrote, "I firmly believe that we will get to the promised land of collective fulfillment. I still believe that right here in America, we will reach the promised land of brotherhood. Oh, I know there are still dark and difficult days ahead. And I believe it because somehow the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. We shall overcome because Carlyle is right. No lie can live forever. We shall overcome because William Cullen Bryant is right. Truth, crushed to earth, will rise again. We will overcome because James Russell Lowell is right. Truth forever on the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne. Yet that scaffold sways the future, and behind the dim unknown standeth God within the shadow, keeping watch over his own." He continued, "With this faith we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith we will be able to speed up the day." Words failed me. I struggled to come up with a coherent description and understanding of this last week's events that are worthy of your time here this morning. I can come up with some words to describe how I felt. Awestruck by the courage and composure, revolted by arrogance, entitlement, and co-opting legitimate stories of suffering. Disbelieving of what my ears heard and my eyes saw. Discomfort watching the discomfort of a man trapped in an elevator by truth. Cynicism, hope, helplessness, and awareness that I was desperately searching for hope in this spectacle. Within several hours of a single day and evening, we witnessed the best and the bad of human nature. The willing selflessness to tell a story of violent abasement, using its violence to expose lies and suppression, which can, and in this case did, transform suffering into purpose and gave meaning to that suffering. We bore witness to a suffering woman empowered by telling her truth to others. Now that took my breath away. And then the reaction. We witnessed the judge become the judged and claim he was an innocent victim. What a lesson. We witnessed how easily a skilled and aggressive person creates an alternative reality. Now we know co-opting another one's story looks like. And there was a brief revival of hope that took place in an elevator of all places. Who knew two women screaming their stories through their tears could hold the elevator doors open long enough to give compassion and justice a chance to enter? I would not be able to bear Friday's proceedings if I did not believe there was a path through this wilderness. Last week I spoke of two ways of bringing our own light to dark places. One is the kind of living, active love called agape, which moves us to care and to act for the benefit of others. Events are still unfolding, but to me, what Dr. Blatchley Ford did looks like agape. Action motivated by love for others and justice. And the other I talked about last week was the Great Surmise, a term coined by Unitarian Universalist minister Carl Scoville. And that is that the Great Surmise posits that at the heart of all creation lies a good intent, a purposeful goodness from which we come, by which we live our fullest, to which we shall at last return. It is the reassurance that no act of love is isolated, that nothing can separate us from the love from which we came and to which we shall return. This great surmise does not negate the real and present danger of evil or the intentions to do evil, to injure, or to diminish another's inherent worth and dignity. It is not simply optimism. Love, agape, and the supposition that we come from and will return to love gives us a place to rest from the worst the world can bring us. And we must rest. We must collect our feelings, get our bearings, put outrage aside for a while, find our own vocabulary of restoration, whether it's writing, walking, a hobby, our garden, because we will be called again and again to witness, march, write letters to all sorts of people in power, to be kind to others, to be patient, be charitable, and keep learning and relearning when to speak, when to shout, when to hold our tongues, when to pray alone or together, silently or out loud. Theodore Parker said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." King added, "With this faith, we will be able to speed up the day of justice." And this brings us to faith. And Jesus' story of the mustard seed. In those times, the audience understood the significance of the mustard seed. It was produced in vast numbers. It had a hard coating and could survive for years in rocky, unfertile soil. It was tiny enough to fall into the cracks and crevices of the dry soil and survive until the rains came and dissolved the protective coating. Then it set down its primary root, its first leaf, and quickly grew into a bush so great that the birds of the heavens rested in it. Here is the story from the book of Matthew, chapter 17, verses 14 through 22. When they came to the crowd, a man came to him and knelt before him and said, "Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is an epileptic and he suffers terribly. He often falls into the fire and often into the water. And I brought him to your disciples, but they could not cure him." And Jesus answered, "You faithless and perverse generation, how much longer must I be with you? How much longer must I put up with you? Bring him here to me." And Jesus then rebuked the demon, and it came out of him, and the boy was cured instantly. The disciples later came to Jesus privately and said, "Why could we not cast it out?" And he said to them, "Because of your little faith. For truly I tell you, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, You will say to the mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible. Jesus never defines faith. He describes it in story and in parable. However, Matthew's passage about the mustard seed has a meaning that is distinctly agrarian and metaphorical. Further description of the mustard seed is how it is adapted to a harsh environment in the desert life. Its leaves are hairy, which conserve water, and they have a rough, tough coat and remain viable in the ground for years. The birds love the mustard seeds and help distribute them throughout the countryside. Faith is a concept that presents problems for religious liberals. Since the Enlightenment, we claim to really know, or what we really know, is based on observable evidence and a rational intellectual process. The challenge of religious liberalism often involves a willingness to affirm faith without certainty, says the Unitarian Universalist scholar Paul Razor. Let me repeat that. The challenge of religious liberalism often involves a willingness to affirm faith without certainty. Faith is not a word we Unitarian Universalists use often, but I see examples of it all the time. Again and again, we renew our commitment to justice. We have faith that we can make a difference despite the fact that justice is often achieved over lifetimes and months or years or decades. You have faith. We just don't use the word very often to describe ourselves. I wish we would. I want us to take back the word faith. It is rich, empowering, and sustaining. It is the size of the mustard seed that helps us understand the power of a tiny amount of faith. Our yes. Faith is about saying yes. It is not about ultimate truth. It's certainly not about an only truth. Faith recognizes the loving creation that is part and parcel of our very being. Scoville's great surmise that we are part of creation's yes. We often live our lives as though we were entirely self-generated, self-created, forgetting, as the psalmist said, it is God who has made us, not we ourselves. If you are uncomfortable with this language, or you do not believe in God, the fact remains, we are not entirely self-generated and self-creating. Once in a while, we all stand in wordless awe of creation beyond our understanding. Perhaps the wonder of faith is that we can only really understand it as it is lived out. Yes is not a word we say to a rock. Life with faith unfolds before us. We are reassured there is a future, even if we don't know our place in it. Agape, active love for the sake of others. The great surmise, no act of love is isolated. Nothing can separate us from the love from which we came and to which we shall return. Faith, yes to the future in the absence of certainty. You each have your spiritual gifts, your own light to bring to our wounded and beautiful world. We will survive these times of turmoil and disappointment. The roots and wings of our faith will set us free.